All right. I'm glad we got that over and done with. I have no idea how this recording is going to go, considering it's my first time. So,
well, we've got
see.
plenty of risks this time around.
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
to be fair, I mean you've got me helping you, which is great.
that is always a concern, Benjamin.
No, it's not. I've helped you.
You look like you're in a disco right now. There's different colours just flashing across your camera.
It's because I got the game. I got the game.
Oh, you're gonna be distracted.
What's the
distracted.
score?
It's 0-0 at half time.
It's half time. Yeah, I'm not watching it. I promise.
But turn
We
it
can
off then.
see the reflection in your glasses, so
Yeah.
we know when you're lying.
Well, you can check the score. You can't see the reflection. I need like
can.
a Groucho Marx. I need like
We
a
can see
Groucho
the
Marx.
reflection.
I need like a Groucho Marx, like the big nose
you need
and the
some better
mustache.
glasses, right? That don't
Nah,
have
these
this
are
reflection.
these are Armani Exchange. These are. I got these when I started casting, just so I'd look better.
Should I actually join you guys? Because I actually have mine.
There you go. Those do
Is
not
that-
suit the shape of your face now.
I don't know what
disagree.
suits my face.
Whoever got you those has bugged you right
Is
off.
they're lying to you.
Did you choose that without wearing any glasses at all at the time?
Yes.
As if
I
you
did.
couldn't see what you were wearing?
Exactly.
I've
This is the problem.
never worn glasses.
So
Before.
I
No, they're
wore
all right.
rounded glasses once and never again in my life did I wear rounded glasses. I think you would look better with square glasses as well.
I have square glasses downstairs, but this just happened to be the one that I've got recently because it was paid for on the company.
I really want those really thick frame glasses, like just black thick frame. I did try them on in
The Austin Powers.
glasses. Yeah, those ones.
Yeah.
I did try. No, not like bifocals. Does he wear bifocals?
He does not wear bifocals.
No, I got it wrong. But they were Gucci, and I was like, oh, these gotta look good, and they didn't. I don't know. I think I could pull it off.
I honestly have no idea what suits a face shape, so lots to learn from my side.
Been through many pairs of glasses, and I know that
Yeah.
almost all of the shapes don't suit my face. So I'm locked into one shape.
Your hair's grown back rapidly
Yeah, that's very
because
true.
the last.
My hair always grows really quickly. That's why I let it grow long and then chop, because my hair just
then just
grows
chop it
so
off.
quickly. Even when it was super short, the makeup people at the NAIC were like, as they were like styling my tiny stub of hair, they were like, "My God, your hair is thick." Every hairdresser I ever have is like, "Your hair is like a forest. It's just so thick."
It doesn't get
Yeah.
much longer than now, does it? You don't tend to leave it.
Oh
that
yeah,
long.
it gets way longer. It gets way longer.
Oh no! I remember the photo.
It goes out.
Yeah.
And it
The
and it comes
usual
down a lot
photo
longer.
you've had on the casting reveals is quite amusing. The one that I take the piss out of you on.
Yeah, that one.
Why would
Where
they
it's
give
kind
me
of
a
like-
side
it's
profile
kind of
for
like-
a start? Because I've got
It's-
the
it's-
massive nose.
Is that the side piece?
Oh,
With, like,
I
the
was talking
side-
about that Hasbula one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right, moving on. Right, okay. So welcome everybody to the Spill the TCG podcast. It has been 3 long weeks, I think. Now we had a terrible effort of trying to pull together a podcast last week. Benjamin tried his hardest, but it's all his fault. So shit hit the
Not my
fan.
I mean, there were
But here we are,
3
we're
things
trying
wrong.
again.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
you can
I mean, there
say
were-
what you want. We can't hear you, Ben. What is that?
No, there were 3 things wrong. There was Joe's audio, then my audio, then Dad's audio.
and
was
then
just,
mine
like,
throughout, which was quite amusing.
generally the worst.
So we're hoping this doesn't have that. But I'm joined, of course, so myself, Alex Dow, joined with Joe Bernard of Omnipoke and Benjamin Rabaiotti or Benjamin James, however you'd like to know him. Just Benji, Ben, that guy.
Rab. Yeah.
Rab. We'll call him
it's
Rab periodically.
It's usually the
podcast.
guy with the guy I want to see. It's like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. Yeah.
The one that got away. Yeah.
Often
Yeah.
referred to as.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's the one I usually use, especially with Harriet.
Okay, so because we're having to almost re-record this, we will quickly go over a very similar sort of structure that we had last time. We'll probably cut it down.
They won't
quite
know
a
that.
lot. Yeah.
I was gonna say,
But you
They
might
won't
sort
know
of-
that this is a rerun, but it certainly is.
But they might hear it in our voices, Joe. We're not going to have the same excitement as we already discussed
Oh, yes, we are.
kicking this off.
Yeah.
But of course, before our last episode, we were sort of thinking about NAIC or going into NAIC, where myself and Joe did make the trip over to New Orleans. New Orleans. Some people say New Orleans. New Orleans. No, it's apparently very wrong. Call it that. And Benjamin was watching it from probably another holiday destination.
From
I actually
afar,
can't remember
yeah.
if you were away, to be honest.
No, I was at home. I was watching it like a little excited boy. I was like a child. I was like sat there right on the floor, kind of watching it. It was just the whole event was amazing to watch. Some great games. But yeah, I was happy to be sitting there from the sofa, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, we had multiple messages from you throughout the weekend. But yeah, you were, exactly like a excited little puppy. But, let's go to Joe first. We've done this before, so he's probably very bored. Look at his face. He's very angry that we're doing this again.
Yeah, he's explained it already.
What do you mean?
The thing was, there was so much energy in the last recording as well.
I
and
actually
you
said
just
that
won't
before
get it this time.
Before we started, Rab, I said that one of our sections was so good last week that I don't think we could ever possibly replicate how good it is going to be this week.
Joe was trying his hardest to rile me up again.
The coaching chat which we had.
I think we can have that again. Why not?
I hope we can.
Well, we'll
I hope for the viewers' sake that we can.
There were some things that were said by Joe I still don't agree with, and I think it's a good thing that they are the lost tapes.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I can't. I don't know when we'll be able to release Joe's true feelings about coaching and.
What is this? I was the one defending it.
Oh, Joe, you can't track back now. That's
right.
weak.
This is
That's really
absurd.
weak. That's just weak of you. This isn't like you.
Plenty
Brilliant.
more to come, boys. Let's reel it back in. Let's talk NAIC very quickly first. In the lead up to the tournament, Joe, I think, as it was very well known, you were one of the dedicated casters for the TCG tournament. So how was it in the lead up and the build up to actually NAIC? It was your first IC of the season and the first NAIC of your career.
Yeah, it's really cool. It means I've done every internationals now, which is a cool sort of boast I have, I suppose. And a lot of casters won't have the chance to go to Australia now, of course. So that's a cool thing. I'm part of an elite club in a way. Casting with Ross as well is always a great thing. We have such good chemistry together. And also just a great team from Pablo, from Boo, from Jeremy backstage as well. So, and Juancho obviously doing the hosting and interview role. I thought there was a lot of good talent on display for the biggest tournament we've had in the West. And obviously, whenever it's a new set and the first of a format, that's always the best time to be commentating because we get to explore the unexplored and see alongside the viewers at the same time, like what's coming out on top. And there was a lot of narratives going into the NAIC with Dragapult. Who knows where we had that rated? Some people were saying it's the best. Some people were saying it was literally fraudulent. And this was the tournament where we'd sort of find that out. And I think going into the tournament, there was a ton of Lugia and Raging Bolt hype coming off of the Japanese national tournament as well. And that was certainly like the deck to beat going into the tournament. So a lot of interesting thoughts heading into the event. And then obviously, as we saw the day 1 to day 2 pan out, we started to see this narrative of the top echelon of players are gravitating towards Gardevoir for them in the main, and that's ended up with a very lopsided top 8 with 6 Gardevoir of the top 8 decks. Even the 9th place deck was Gardevoir. I think it was 9 in top 16 or something. Gardevoir was really dominating the event overall. And in part, it was thanks to good old Monkey Dory, my favourite card of the new sets, and that had many highlight reel moments throughout the entire weekend, which was awesome. But also things like Unfair Stamp were on full display in some of these tournament games as well. So those were some of the biggest takeaways, I think, of the weekend for me.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's a lot to say around the tournament itself. It was great to, I don't know how you saw it, Ben, but it was great to see obviously yourself and Ross partnered once again. Obviously, it was Bologna just before as well.
Yeah.
So you had a nice little bit of a session together first.
Yeah.
Although it was a different format.
I spent probably 2 weeks just talking with Ross essentially.
Yeah.
In 3 different countries, and travel and then tournament and then travel and tournament the whole time.
Yeah, it was good
cool.
prep, right? it was good prep because like
course,
you'd already
yeah.
done so many rounds before
I honestly
it started. So
yeah, I honestly feel like we like click straight back into place. We know our roles really well, and because it has been so many years that we have done these broadcasts together, that midway through a sentence, you know what they're gonna say, so you can already like think about what you're trying to say and like lead off from that. So it did feel very natural, and that's a really nice feeling to have broadcasting, because it means you can I can focus entirely on the game the entire time, and let Ross carry other aspects of the broadcast. So that was helpful for me.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things I'm sure we'll dive into when we get a chance to properly spill a lot of tea over sort of casting and that kind of aspect. That's going to be hopefully an episode coming up pretty soon. But you touched on a couple of different aspects there, Joe. Let's talk about the fun bit first. Monkey Dory. You had a little Monkey Dory of your own that became a star in its own right, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, the Monkey Dory. So we did the promo for the World Shop, and I saw the Monkey Dory on the Thursday morning, and I was like, oh my god, I have to buy this. And then when I did get my slot to go into the centre, I immediately just bought Monkey Dory and literally like a couple other things. So I had that Monkey Dory plush backstage the entire weekend essentially, and then it ended up being the Monkey Dory used for all of the like official Pokemon Twitch skits that they ended up doing, because obviously it became the star of the show. On some of the broadcast moments for the games, you know, there were so many midterm prizes and math fixing and all these other cool plays that were available just because of this card. So it was just a perfect storm of me liking Monkey Dory going into the tournament, and also having it as like a cast prediction, so that it became like a running joke almost that Monkey Dory was like running the event kind of thing. So that was really cool to see, and it was unfortunate that they were so popular in the centre that we had other skits planned for Monkey Dory, but we were out of stock of Monkey Dories, so we couldn't do more of the skits that we had eventually planned, where there was going to be like 6 Monkey Dory on the table to demonstrate the top 8, and then as they were getting knocked out of top 8, Carson would like punch them or throw them into the crowd and do other random wacky stuff. That would have been such a fun segment to do, but it didn't pan out. But still, yeah, that was one of the more fun sort of like undercurrents of the weekend, I guess.
Yeah,
the socials are. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, something that they can maybe start prepping ahead for in future times. Just buy all the stock first and see what happens later.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll give it back, Pokemon Center. It's fine. But yeah, Ben, for you, was breakout card of the tournament?
I would say so. Yeah, I think that was definitely the big surprise going into it, as to how effective it was actually going to be. But then, you know, made it all the way to the final, and of course was prevalent in many other Gardevoir lists and even in some Lost Box as well. So, you know, it just goes to show how strong that effect was going into the tournament. But, you know, there were other discussions around what is the correct A-spec to play now. I think I touched upon it in the other recording, obviously, but it was definitely a debate going into it, especially with Gardevoir specifically and Charizard. It's what is the correct A-spec to play, and how do you balance your deck around utilizing it the best and to the most efficient way. But I asked both of your aspects on it because, of course, one of you were playing, one of you were commentating, and were there any discussions going into the tournament about, you know, which is going to be the most efficient way to play with any given A-spec?
I mean, I can take it from my side as a player going into AIC. We know it's a massive tournament, right? So we know that there's tried and tested formulas of certain combos or A-spec cards. You know, we know that Prime Catchers had a real strong place in the meta in the lead up to Twilight Masquerade coming into the format. But we always knew on the horizon that Unfair Stamp was just there, ready to sort of, you know, pounce, as it were. Going into the tournament for myself, there was a lot of talk around Unfair Stamp. We know that there was a lot of Metafy classes and lots of sort of different, I don't know, podcasts and videos on sort of various numerous A-specs themselves, but towards one around Dragapult sort of comboed the biggest card that was coming out of Twilight Masquerade that everyone wanted to play against and test against, or even try and break, but also came out with this idea around, well, how about just utilizing Unfair Stamp a little bit more? And that was kind of the core of a lot of the list that he was putting into his classes. So it put a lot of limelight on Unfair Stamp, probably less so than I thought it might have. But at the same time, it was like a week or maybe just over a week left before NAIC. A lot of people would have locked in by then. But from my side, it was, yeah, and I'll openly admit, we took essentially what Towards pulled together as a 5-card combo. It was the ace spec of Unfair Stamp. It was Tempo of Sinnoh to sort of counter things like Lugia, because it had such a big sort of reckoning coming into NAIC, alongside 3 other cards, which were also so important as well, which suddenly just escaped my mind, in all honesty, despite me having Victor. Yeah, Ratsard. Okay.
Yeah.
You could counter the use of actually using Prime Catcher and things like that, by utilizing Counter Catcher, and depending on the deck that you were playing, especially the deck that I ended up moving on to, and potentially the deck I originally was offset on as well, I often would go 1 prize behind. And then I can actually utilize cards like that quite to a lot of sort of versatility, as it were. Being able to combo a supporter card with a catcher or a gust with a Unfair Stamp is incredible, and I will go out on the record to say that I do think Unfair Stamp is the best ace spec card right now.
100%. I think, it changes a lot of game plans for a lot of decks, right? I mean, we spoke about it before. Lost Box now, a turn 2 Unfair Stamp from a Cramorant easy prize is so effective now. Just putting your Lost Zone opponent to 2 cards so early on is so detrimental. And, going into NAIC, I don't think that game plan would have been sussed out, and I don't think they would have recognized what decks Unfair Stamp would have gone into as a must. I think they would have gone into it, thinking Gardevoir, yeah, probably Unfair Stamp. Charizard, probably not. I still think Prime Catcher and Hero's Cape is still so popular in that archetype, and I think it comes on to the first point I made, is that these decks now can play so many different variants of an ace spec because they are so inherently strong. But the sneaky Unfair Stamp just seems so broken. It just seems so good. I think it's a must-have in Gardevoir now. I think we touched upon it before about Hyper Aroma. I know it made 2nd place, but Joe, I think you saw it was ineffective most of the time, right?
Yeah, the more I saw games throughout the entire weekend, the more I was impressed by Unfair Stamp, and the less I was impressed with the Hyper Aroma. I've since listened to Evenhoff talk about Aroma in the deck list, and it's literally just a case of like, I'm always playing the game, and it gives me the flexibility to go first in a couple of matchups. And I think that's completely valid, but the Unfair Stamp gives you a win condition checkpoint of your opponent has to have drawn well enough after exactly the stamp turn, otherwise you're just going to run away with a lot of games, especially in the Gardevoirs, the Dragapults, the Charizards, where they do so much on their turn. If they've been given a bit more time, they can really just capitalize. So I think Unfair Stamp is absolutely crazy, and it's actually why we saw like the most aggressive builds of Lost Zone Box be the ones that did the best, because rather than accepting that cram spit into all these matchups that could theoretically play Stamp, they had to unlock gates first, and then they can prep other Pokemon at the same time, or have such a devastating swing of tempo that even after a Stamp, their attack is still not dealt with, or this, that, and the other can still be the case, so they still have a play the following turn. So that also kind of bleeds into it, and partly why Hedrick's build and the whole crew that played the same list with him was so genius, is that they played just a very streamlined, very aggressive list of Lost Box, so that they could forego the average turn of a cram and look for like the highest impact play possible. So that was also just a cool thing to see. And I think partly that is in response to Unfair Stamp. So that just shows how far ahead of their sort of testing they were. Because like you said, Alex, that 5-card package that Todd sort of talked about in all the different builds of Dragapult, I was very early on Double Counter Catcher, Radzard, Sinnoh. I was quite late on Unfair Stamp. And I think it became more and more evident throughout the weekend that this should be in a lot of decks right now.
Yeah. No, I completely understand. Yeah, sorry,
I usually weigh up how powerful a card is by how many complaints there are on social media, and Unfair Stamp into the conclusion of NAIC was definitely the number one target for a lot of players to complain. So yeah, you know it's going to be an unpopular card, but then it's going to be a card that you're going to have to keep an eye out from now on.
I think it's just because you can play it so early on, often leaving your. I mean, Joe's kind of mentioned it a little bit as well, but just often leaving your opponent with still quite a thick deck. If you're not really prepared or haven't gone through a lot of that so far, like I said, it is that gate point or that checkpoint of saying, well, can you, from your free cards that you'll be seeing, continue playing the game? If you stutter a little bit, most decks nowadays are consistent enough with 5 cards and their normal sort of draw engines or, quick search tutoring engines, that they'll just run you over if you do stutter. And it's just that small percentage that you can gain just by playing one card is, it was truly incredible sort of throughout for me on the weekend as well. I guess we'll just quickly come back a little bit, because I know we've spoken a bit about sort of the tournament and sort of going into the top 8 and the Gardevoirs. With the metas of day 1 and day 2, we'll go to you, Ben, since you weren't at the event. Was it a surprise for what you saw from day 1? Day 1 Lugia was pretty much I wouldn't say runaway deck, but it had the highest percentage. Raging Bolt, sorry, the other one-hit KO deck, was second, and then Gardevoir was sort of propping up the numbers with another double-digit as well. Dragapult itself, from what we saw from the graphic, was the 5% roughly the number, but again, wasn't the fully encompassing Dragapult list, so it didn't encompass sort of lost Dragapult, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
How did you think about that, Ben? Like going into NAIC?
I think that was expected. The only two surprises I think I can remember from NAIC Meta Day 1 was how many people actually trusted Lugia going into it. Because if anybody's tested hands with Lugia, I think Joe said it best to Alex a couple of days before the tournament. If you want to play Lugia, just do not test it because it is a shambles.
And what did we do immediately?
I
on
still
Wednesday
believe
night
it.
or Thursday. I'm pretty sure
I had to play
games. Well, I then played like 1 or 2 games of this, and I thought this is awful.
Yeah,
I still believe it.
It's obviously not awful, but it's so bizarre.
I just can't. I can't trust Lugia. I just do not think it's consistent enough for you to guarantee. I mean, day 2 is never guaranteed, right? But there's much safer picks for players to pick in order to try and guarantee themselves into a day 2 spot. The only other surprise was the underrepresentation of Charizard. I think it was much lower than I thought it would have been going into the tournament. I think Charizard now has to contain so much in the deck to keep up with the meta now. So I think people were off-put by that and chose a little bit more of a linear deck lists like Raging Bolt. So that was a bit of a surprise to me, because I still think people had trusted that engine of the Pidgeot regardless of how many sort of texts you would have to contain in the deck. But no, there were not too many surprises. I think the Dragapult thing was expected from myself. I don't think people would have unlocked this kind of all-encompassing fantastic list in the short time period that they had with the card going into NAIC. And I think there was too much chatter as well about how to play the deck. I think there were too many variants going into the tournament for people to go, yeah, that's the one, that's the best, that's the one that will, put me in a better position to, go through this tournament and get myself some points. Because that was another thing as well, right? A lot of people were going into this tournament like, I just need points. I just need top whatever to make Worlds. So they were picking the safest pick possible. Mm-hmm. And I just do not think Dragapult was it, because I just don't think it was unlocked yet. Obviously, some people took it and did really well with it, which is all kudos to them, because I do think it's a great card. And personally, it's a card that I haven't put down yet. I think it's a really challenging deck, but it's one that is very satisfying to play, I think. And that's coming from somebody who's played Block Snorlax for a year, so,
Actually take prizes for once. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But no surprises from myself. What about you, Joe?
I was surprised by the lack of Pult. I thought there would be more.
Okay.
Just because of that versatility. I thought there would be this, 3% here, 3% there, 3% of each smuttering, so I thought it probably would have been more popular than Lost Box overall from my prediction. The Guardi, I thought, was actually going to be even more popular than it was as well, because it was the best performer in the online results, and it was so obvious that it was good into Raging Bolt, and it was so obvious that it could fight into Lugia as well. So I thought that would be even more popular, but it seemed like it was just a high echelon of players that chose to pick that deck on average. So it had some popularity, but from the high echelon of players, like percentage-wise, that was crazy. I got access to deck lists at 8:30 in the morning on the Friday, and my first like searches were mostly of players who are in the top 22 race right now, just naturally to try and look at storylines for the tournament for players to keep an eye out for. And every time I was clicking a list, I was seeing God of War, God of War, God of War. So I was like, well, I know what I'm in for from like round one. And that did just carry on being the case, I suppose. I think Lost Box was interesting. I was personally worried about the unfair stampness of the deck, but it seemed like it was circumnavigated, like I said earlier, so that was kind of cool to see. And yeah, I'm not surprised by the Lugia excitement, because it really did dominate the Japanese meta. And when you see a deck dominated best of one, that almost gives you the trick that it's consistent, because it can go far. But there's certainly many people that probably flocked with Lugia as well. And I think it's also the case that Lugia was so expected to do well that it was also quite heavily teched for. Like we saw Ivanov, for example, who got second with God of War, and my light's gone again. This happened literally last week. That's crazy.
It's probably about the same time as well.
Yeah, it really was. That's wild. I didn't blind the viewers that time, but I did this time at least. What was I going to say? Yeah, we saw Ivanov play Hammer and Sinnoh, and I think everyone was coming with that second copy of Countercatcher so they can target Archeop straight away, or that E-Hammer for the searchability option, sometimes in addition to a Sinnoh, or everyone was packing a Sinnoh in whatever deck it was. So I think it's a combination of like, yes, it's not the most consistent deck. I thought that was fine because it was best of 350 minutes, that I thought it worked enough to be still okay. But it was that combination of that factor, plus everyone is worried about beating Lugia and have tested a ton against Lugia, so they know all the weaknesses of that archetype, which were pretty glaring, to be fair. So
yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary of NAIC in day one, particularly as well. I mean, I think, if I'm not mistaken, was Miraidon fourth on that?
No, Lost Box.
Sorry, was it Lost
Miraidon?
Box?
I think Miraidon was on the end of the page. I think.
Yeah, I felt like it was up there. I mean,
it was like 6%, and then it was like 5-6%, and then then it went into Charizard, Chien-Pao, like future, those sorts of decks like further down.
Yeah, because I obviously I saw, I think Ian Robb was playing. He targeted Lugia's down and tried to go for the Miraidon play. But it was quite interesting to kind of see the mindset of certain players going into the tournament anyway. But as you mentioned, the upper echelon of those sort of top tier players all sort of landing on God of War. But everyone who maybe, I'm not going to say are mid-tier, but like maybe consider themselves not as experienced, wouldn't want to take God of War because of that factor of maybe drawing all of these potential rounds.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of factors that go into it, right? Yeah. And I'm not saying that there weren't like good players playing other decks. That obviously still were. So, of course. But Alex, as a player, so you were in this position where you needed points from the NAIC to secure your Worlds invite. You needed top 1,000 and 24, whatever it is. So tell us about your thoughts in that build-up to the tournament, what you eventually ended up playing, which I don't think you've mentioned yet, and how your run went.
Yeah, no, I'll happily go into it a little bit quickly. So, obviously, up until maybe even 2 weeks before the tournament, I was pretty much set on Lost Dragon Bolt. I felt like it had a great engine. It had the engine which Lost Charizard EX had struggled with, because you had the Dracloak draw as well. And I know, Joe, you've been a bit of a champion of Lost Charizard EX in previous tournaments. So I was pretty set. It was then just trying to figure out what techs I wanted in it, and of course you catch wind of Tord's Masterclass, and I had spoken to Tord a little bit before that even happened as well, and I was like, I'm set on Lost Dragon Ball or maybe Gardevoir, and he's like, that's probably where I'm at as well. And then out came his Masterclass, and suddenly everyone's obviously trying out Lost Dragon Ball as well. Where you start to realize, and I thought it was supposed to be really good. You start spitting with Cram nice and early, then go into Dragapult, you're doing sort of 310 damage. In theory, it doesn't sound too bad because you can kind of clean up with more Dragapult pings or Sableye pings afterwards. But actually, 310, when you start to think about it, it's actually quite bad. And often because you're trying to maybe apply that pressure, where we start to talk about unfair stamp coming into play and getting a lot of talk behind the scenes as well. Having to cram into something like a Routes or a Curlier feels really bad when they unfair stamp you straight away and you're still stuck on 4, your board not very well set up. But yeah, so in the lead up to that, that was what I was on. I think I'd like to say every week I asked Joe, what about Charizard? And I'm pretty sure every time he told me just put it away for now. I know you were pretty set on like it just not being good enough into potentially a Dragon Ball meta.
As I said earlier, I expected more Pult, and that was a big reason.
Never trust Joe.
Never trust Joe.
To be fair, I was eventually turned in the final couple of days of the tournament, but I think Alex is getting there.
Yeah. So the final couple of days. And big shout outs to Adam Hawkins and Timo Yusuf, who I've spent a lot of time with. Adam's a good friend. I was there when he top forward NAIC once upon a time, despite not being there to watch it. I think I actually mentioned this last time as well, but I was too busy watching the football rather than supporting my friend at such a big match. But England in the knockout stages, I'm not going to miss that, despite being in the US. But yeah, they were on Lugia, and so I spent a lot of time playing a few games against Lugia, and I just couldn't work out how Dragapult beats that.
It's a hard matchup for Lost Pult, to be fair.
Yeah, even with sort of the 5-card combo or package that sort of tour is represented in his masterclass.
Yeah,
but
that engine doesn't find the pieces. Right?
Exactly,
that's the problem.
And that's where we kind of get back and swing back around to the deck I eventually played. So I did speak to Demetrius Eaton. We were both on Wi-Fi on the planes, messaging each other. I was trying to get games on live going, and let me tell you now, don't ever bother, because I got about 2 games in.
Were you playing chess and backgammon on those 5-inch screens that you get on the back of the suit?
I may as well have been, just waiting for it to load. That's probably what I spent most of my time on. But yeah, despite spending
a Lugia.
Yeah, knockout. But we were back and forth, and he basically said this is the play, and it was a Charizard list with a similar sort of package, maybe a couple of different tech cards, and it just got me thinking again, why would I move away from something that we know is super consistent? Yeah. The only thing it can struggle up against is Dragapult, if you end up facing against it, if you can tech against something like a Lugia, right? And the 5-card package allows you to start teching towards Lugia, probably bringing it to like a 50-50 after playing a few games. In hindsight, I think we maybe should have played one more card, played that E-Hammer as well, and I think we would have been golden and nothing to worry about. But it was then thinking about the rest of the meta, and we were like, well, this is good into literally everything else, or at least it can have games against everything else. It's good against Raging Ogre. It's generally good against things like Miraidon. It's good against like just generally other decks that you'd
solid into Guardi as well.
Yeah, and Guardi, of course. So we were like, okay, tested this a few times. Made a few changes, so we didn't play the same list as Demi in the end, but me, Timur, and Adam did. We cut a few different things. We cut Jirachi, so that probably made our Lost Box a little bit scarier. But in hindsight, it probably wasn't too bad because we unfair stamp back and things like that as well. But we honestly just landed on Charizards and hitting unfair stamp as soon as possible, and then just getting the combo pieces because you have quick search, because you have the barrel still to draw.
Yeah,
and you have this attacker that actually just keeps ramping up, right? We also play the Kieran to increase the damage outputs as well. And for us, that felt like the safest pick. So going into the tournament, I was pretty comfortable. I took a lot of ties, which maybe I shouldn't have, but that just because of my kind of inexperience with maybe just getting back into a tournament.
Getting onto the deck on the last 2 days. Yeah.
I played Charizard in Stockholm as well.
Classic. That's true. Classic Alex Dow move.
I was quite comfortable playing Charizard. But,
what do my own cards do again?
What do I do?
Did I read one of my own cards? I definitely read Kieran multiple times.
Joe, wake up. How do I beat this matchup?
Is this an and or all effect? Because I can't quite...
Does it increase damage on all Pokemon? Can I use my Charmander to take out a Beldum?
What if I Kieran then use Counter Catcher? Because I'm confused.
Yeah. Well,
so when you went into game, when you said you made day 2, I was like, really buzzing because I was originally thinking you were playing Dragapult Lost Box, and I was like, that's great, well done, blah blah blah, made the invite and all that jazz. But then I found out you were playing Charizard, and I was even more elated because with Charizard, seeing the day 1 meta, I totally agree with everything you just said, but I think going back to what I said about they saw that you had to play 5 more one-ofs or 6 more one-ofs to beat this or beat that. I don't think people had the inherent trust in the deck, knowing that how consistent it actually was with the Pidgeot and the Barrel Engine. And I think people should have committed to Charizard's testing.
I think it's because Dragapult was that big unknown, you know?
Yeah.
Alex could have walked into a field of 12% Dragapult, and then Charizard's a terrible play. He walked into the right metagame because he was 2 days out from the tournament listening to what other people were saying and all this other stuff, and essentially had that elation of, like, people won't pull the trigger on Pult because they don't know the best list, which you were saying, Rab.
Yeah.
Or because it's, like, too exposed now, because not only did the masterclass, everyone saw, essentially, the gist of the masterclass, even if they didn't actually listen to all of it, through one means or another. Mm-hmm. So, the information was public, essentially.
The biggest thing we took away was that everyone wanted to test against Pult rather than actually test Pult itself. So everyone was building their deck to sort of, go up against Dragapult. They realized Dragapult's not necessarily like a lie, but it just hadn't found its place yet. So me and Demi, when speaking about it, and again with Adam and Timur as well, we went into the tournament essentially thinking we'll take the bad matchup, which is we'd like to hope will be around a 10%, but we should be at least okay to good into the rest of the field.
Yeah, it was a very calculated risk. Yeah,
sure. And it paid off for me because, I mean, unlike Adam, who ended up facing up against 2 Pidgeot controls back to back in like round 3s and 4 or something like that.
That is...
I played against no control. I didn't meet any Dragapult throughout my 2 days. Well, unless you count Regidrago in my first round.
That's easier for you as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a little bit scary because he did get like a turn to attack off, but there was also the rush pre the tournament to try and find 70 HP Charmanders, which probably made a great deal of difference. Not the promo one, which I think is the actual correct one, from at least 1 or 2 copies of it, because 40 damage for 2 fires can maybe knock out something in Guardi, for example. But yeah, finding those 70 HP Charmanders were pretty vital. And I just ended up having a pretty good run. Like I said, I tied quite a lot, so it put me on knife's edge. And you both know very well, and a lot of our friends know very well, that I get very nervy during tournaments nowadays. I'm always like glass half empty kind of a person.
You'll see him storming off, even though he's got the match slip in his hand.
I don't agree with that. I think you get more kind of. I'm 5-0.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
that's what he's saying.
He's still
like,
he'll come along. He'll come along. So he'll come along to the huddle, and then me and Joe will be like, "Oh, we're 1-2," or like, and then Connor's there like, "Oh, I'm 0-3 or whatever."
There, Joe.
and then Dad's like coming over and he's smiling and he's like, "Oh, I'm 3-0.
I don't see him smiling. That's the thing.
I've got another 6 rounds to play.
I see him angry at winning a round. That's what I...
Yeah. That's another thing as well. He gets angry or is like,
it's more just like down. He's down about the whole situation.
So, I mean, putting this all into context, I put a lot of pressure on myself, particularly for Stockholm and NAIC. I was like 100 points off. You guys mock me for moaning about being at like 300 after 2 months of the season, and me going it's so far away. But then, when we start to realize what tournaments we can actually play, because we do class and do get involved.
You were right all along.
Yeah. Now you guys have to realize it's difficult. But
you got it on the last week.
Yeah, so the last 2 tournaments, I set myself the goal of 100 points. Stockholm went maybe a little bit better than expected, because I was just aiming for base points anyway, and then just needed base points at NAIC. So, I ended up locking up in round 8. I was like 404, so I was like, elated, like complete weight lifted off my shoulders. Going into the last round, I couldn't give an F of what I was playing or going up against. Just threw up there. We'll do a gentleman's agreement. Obviously, my opponent was, again, everyone I played was very nice. Again, the final round, he was just, we'll do it on prizes. I was like, sure. I don't know what you're playing, but we'll go over it. He opens Raging Ogre, and I'm like, I can rub my hands a little bit and feel pretty good about this. And I'm like, now I've got to actually play another 6 rounds. That was my actual feeling. It was like,
what a shame.
Well, yeah. Honestly, because
What a drag.
and exactly what
Back
happened.
again.
And what happened in the first round of day 2? I faced up against
Resolve.
a DDG lost box list, which was that turbo, Pokestops and vacuums, and I got rinsed. And that was my tournament out. Well, I wouldn't think I was going to make top 8 at that stage anyway because I was so low down, despite maybe 4 or 5 people in top 8 actually going all the way from the 19 points.
Yeah.
But, at the same time, I was playing, like I said, with a complete, I was lighter than air at that point. It was a relatively easy, more fun tournament day 2 that I've ever played. I got really close. I faced up against a couple of more Raging Ogres, another Lugia. And in the final round, there was an opportunity to make top 64. I go up against regional winner and brother of IC winner, Constant Calama, and we make an agreement. And unfortunately, I kind of throw a little bit in game 2, but it happens. I was already more than happy with where I got to. I think I ended up top 128, which now I've overdone the points structure or points capture that I needed. But super happy. I get to continue my streak. Like I said, I put a lot of pressure on myself of not missing a world since I started playing the game. Back in 2014 as my first full season.
It's a huge achievement, honestly, especially this year.
Yeah.
It's honestly a huge achievement.
Yeah, and I appreciate it.
I gave you congratulations on the last.
Like that was sending me messages. It was really nice. Sorry, Ben, I spoke over you.
I said I was going to give you congratulations, but I've already said it before.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, you did.
Oh,
but that was that was an NAIC. But I guess we can't not talk about the final because I think that was pretty epic. In general, despite seeing God of War throughout the weekend, you get to see it again in the final. Stefan Ivanov piloting his version up against Andrew Hedrick's fantastic DVG Lost Box list. I mean, Ben, as a viewer, you kind of talked about how giddy you were getting already.
I mean, I've said to everybody when I was watching it after game 1 specifically, I think I messaged everyone that I know, Discord, Messenger, WhatsApp, whatever it was. I was messaging everyone like, "Are you seeing this? This is like, you've got to watch this. This is like some of the best Pokemon I've definitely seen live." And I still stand by that. I still think it was probably the best final of a tournament I've seen, or from at least what I can remember. I think everybody could appreciate the level of Pokemon that was being played, and I mean, it just goes down to perseverance and I know it's a cliche, but the will to win. If that's even, I know that's strong.
I'd say that's not what it came down to. But
when he threw that die up in the sky,
I think they both wanted to win.
No, they both wanted to win. No. I agree there. But like for Andrew specifically, I think for most people they were like, I would have scooped there. And I know it was a final. I know you're supposed to play it out. I agree. But I think in most games, if it wasn't a final, a lot of people would have scooped in the position that he was in. But he played to his outs, and he played. I think
75 minutes changes everything, though. I think if he's in 50 min Swiss there, he does scoop. And I think he's even admitted that since in interviews. But he was, throughout the entire day 1, day 2, and throughout the Top Cut games, he was against so many Guardi, obviously. He was super aware of time and how that could work in his benefit. So I think he's always in a playing position there.
Yeah, something we highlighted before in our Lost Tapes version.
We need to stop saying this because we have to actually tell them what we said.
The secret tapes.
We've already said
it.
I was just saying that I'm having to repeat myself again. But
remember, everyone, when we said it last week?
I didn't say remember, but I just said we. Anyway,
can you stop making Joe really, really angry?
Huh? You just trying to rile me up? Is this what it is?
Stop riling him up.
Hedrick's fully aware of the time, so it completely means that if he continues playing game 1, even if he loses, if he wins game 2, going to game 3, and it's going to go to time, he's in a very advantageous position because he can take knockouts quite easily. And usually multiple, right?
There were some admitted misplays, right, from both sides, I think, right? I think both players have since said that they could play differently. going into that matchup. However, what conspired in those 75 minutes was, again, like I said, probably some of the best Pokemon you can watch live.
That's going to be replayed
anybody...
for years, I think. That's definitely going to be one of those segments that one of the casters speaks over and says the like we were there moment.
What was it? The Tales. I forgot what that segment's called now. I should remember it.
One of those segments. I was backstage saying hi to a couple of the people, and I was with Joe at one point, and one of the old, I think it was like a top 4 game.
It's Wailord Stall. What was the other one?
No. It was another one where someone was it. I can't remember exactly.
Was it Ordino?
But me and Joe was talking about this game, and it was like a top 4. It wasn't Ordino. And Joe just points out that
game. It's the Vespa
game.
Yes, it was. It was, and it was just this game that
against
was kind of being played, and it was just like, well, how do you have this as a segment when unfortunately the player kind of played him out of the game twice? Yeah, and then in the exact same manner as well.
I'm honestly stunned that that's a segment that we keep showing over and over again. But now we'll have better segments that we can add. Yeah.
I agree.
Best finals going forward, one time as
that would be cool. There's definitely been a couple of good finals this season. But this one sticks massively in memory, and the crowd was intense as well. We don't get that for TCG. Yeah. I was fortunate enough to go out into the crowd while we were in turns of time. It was getting hectic out there. There were people discussing plays and saying what they should and shouldn't be doing when Evil's been put on the clock from a bundle, and then Hedrick's trying to work through his turn of the sequencing of trying to select versus trying to Pokestop and all this other stuff, and people were saying all sorts of different things of different situations, and it was difficult for the casters at the time to say what the best play was because it was narrow margin situations, right? That's the best sort of high level Pokemon you want, because the board state gets super funky, especially with Klefki, that it was a very hard game to navigate for both of those players, and that's why it became such a thrilling what was it? Especially because then we saw the coin flip to win game 1, and then it's obviously Pokestop with its chorus energy,
Pokestop into double chorus experiment, and
and you think he's toast. So then he literally has a flower selecting which has to hit I don't think he even had any chorus left after that Pokestop, so it would have to hit an energy to Greninja one more time, or exactly the prime catcher, and he hits prime.
And shuffled by, was it our very own...
A judge shuffle. Was it Mike?
I think it was
Mike.
No,
I don't think it was. I don't think it was.
It wasn't Reese.
Mike said if he had done it, he wouldn't have hit prime catch.
Okay, that was it.
That's good.
But congratulations to both those players, of course. Andrew taking down an IC, following all of his regional wins, and Stefan making his 3rd NAIC final after already winning 2 of those, and he could have been the first three-peat winner of an IC, which would have been
insane.
It's incredible to actually see a player of that caliber once again in the finals. But that effectively rounds up our NAIC. We can touch on New Orleans as a city. I think
we haven't really talked about it. For me, I don't have much to say because I was in the convention center the whole time. I had to be in air-conditioned spaces because I was useless outside. It was way too hot for me, sweltering. So that was a bit awkward. But we managed to get some good food a couple of times. We were ordering in, but also went out to a couple of places. I think, Alex, you tried some more food than I did. But I'm happy it's going to be back there next season, to be honest. I think it's seemed pretty good to me, all things considered. And I heard good things about Bourbon Street and all these other nightlife areas. I didn't really get to do much because I was so shattered from day to day. But it seemed like it was a fun town for other people to unwind there as well.
100%. It was on my list as just a place to go and visit, outside of Pokemon anyway. I mean, you hear about things like Mardi Gras and all these other things. I don't think I ever wanted to go to something like that because sometimes it could be a bit too hectic, but it was hectic enough just because I think it's Pride Month or some sort of Pride associated week or day as well, because everything was pretty much popping on Bourbon Street and other associated streets around it. Really cool places to drink, have some really good food, very much sort of that Creole food, which is you get this nice mix of different sort of infusions of the Caribbean, French, because it was owned by the French, if I'm not mistaken, as well. I had some fried alligator. I went to a couple of upmarket like restaurants as well, just celebrating my finish, I guess, in the end. And I actually met some really cool locals as well, which is quite interesting because it's like a very friendly place. You just kind of sit in like a bit of a dive kind of restaurant kind of environment, and then you just sat at a bar eating, chatting away, which is really cool. Something you don't often get too much. When you're in London, we tend to try not to look at each other in the eyes. We might start a fight or something like that. So very Pokemon led. But yeah, it was a really cool city. And yeah, I would happily go back if the opportunity was there. Just because I feel like there's so much more I could do if I did.
Yep.
What did the alligator taste like?
It was so Timur told me it was supposed to taste like really fishy. What I had didn't actually taste that sort of.
Maybe I had crocodile instead or something.
Who knows? But it was actually really really nice. Again, what everyone sort of compares it to is like eating like chicken, but it was like a bit tougher. It was just really nice. It was like eating popcorn chicken in all honesty, with a bit more of a bite to it, I guess. No pun intended.
Yeah. Well, don't get the taste for it. It'd be pretty difficult to get in the UK.
Yeah. I'd like to think so. I mean, the sort of things I brought back were like praline. I think it was quite an interesting like brand of slap your mama of like seasoning and spices that you could buy as well. I don't know if you saw that in the airport, but that was something.
No.
Yeah, it was. But yeah,
Joe got some home.
You can have like
said, Tim, would you like? He arrived home, Tim. Would you like some slap your mama chicken?
Hey, that sounds up your street, to be fair, Ben.
Slap your mama chicken.
Yeah, why not? So. It's no slap your mama seasoning on your food. But yeah, New Orleans was great. So I'm looking forward to it. I mean, it was announced that it was going back again. So let's see how many years it's going to be there. I mean, how many years did we have it in Columbus?
I think it was
3. In Indianapolis, did we have? We probably had it a couple of times.
We had Indianapolis, yeah, as well. But anyway.
Yeah. All right. Moving on, we'll go into our, I guess, final segment, just because we've probably gone around 45 minutes already, or so. We wanted to touch on, I guess, coaching, because I think it was a big thing around the whole X-verse or Twitterverse in sort of recent times. Maybe it died down since we're doing this a week later. Again, sort of that whole coaching, whether you should get coaching or do coaching yourself. Should you use Metafy as a platform? I think this was off the back of JW's initial tweet, maybe sort of last week, where we started opening this discussion. I mean, Joe, we'll go to you first, just because you've actually done coaching. Maybe not on Metafy, but you've done coaching before. But your thoughts on the general sort of landscape of it?
So yeah, I mean, just to sum up JW's video, which is just worth watching in its own right, because he goes into it in more detail from a unique perspective as well as a coach that's, won multiple regionals and is like looking at other people coaching at the same time and what he wants to offer, etc. But he essentially says that like Metafy right now is getting mostly a bad rap from people when there's some genuinely very helpful content there, and overall Metafy is this like net positive because of just like people don't have time to do all this testing with every deck in the format, so it could be a great way to save time to learn from someone who is a pro with one deck, or get a different perspective from different people as well. And obviously high tier players like Tord will have just put more reps in than you, most likely. So obviously these are like really important, helpful, useful things, especially when tournaments have this much prizing on the line, etc., that there is definitely a reason to do Metafy, essentially. But he also says that because there are people who are doing some classes that seem more sort of throwaway, one and done, get rich quick scheme type stuff where you jump on the bandwagon, just try and get as many people signing up to you as possible, and sure, they may not come back, but maybe other people will come to the next one that you do while the going's good, sort of thing. And those bad actors in the community are giving Metafy, or like tarnishing you're getting tarnished in the same brush, just because there are these people who are abusing the current system of how Metafy is, and that we can't really have very transparent ratings of coaches or like reviews that are like unbiased reviews, I think, as well, and like what makes someone a top Metafy coach in the rankings and stuff isn't necessarily like clear or whatever, because there are incentives to take people off your registration of like being coached, etc. So yeah, the like top X% of Metafy coach isn't actually like a real thing. So that was the whole discussion. But also JW did this whole thing of like, if you want to support content creators making like free videos compared to like paywall videos, that it essentially makes no sense for content to be free at the moment because it's just in no way worth the effort put in compared to the effort, like the same effort that you can put in to creating this Metafy class. If you're a reputable source, I suppose, and have put those hours in, you can make many factors of multiples by doing a Metafy class, in theory, if you are this reputable and like known source in the community. And I also did this tweet myself, and I think that was the day of recording last time, where I did this like theoretical exercise of like how many people would pay for a top 10 decks video before an IC, which is what I always do, obviously, on the YouTube channel. And I think I had like 11% of people said that they would pay like $5 for that like theoretical video that I posted. And if the theoretical 11% of the people that actually watched my video, because there was 19k views on the top 10 decks for NAIC, I could have made, in theory, like $10,000 compared to the £80 that I earned on the actual top 10 video that I did. So that's the comparison. You know, that's an obviously like terrible napkin math, not actually the case, bloody blah. So that's like a very unrealistic thing. But I put that post out there not because I ever want to start doing paywall content. I want to make that completely clear, that I made my stance clear that I don't want to paywall any of my content. The only time I've been intrigued by the concept is that doing enough paywall content would allow me to be like full-time, and then in that case I would be doing more free content alongside paid content as just extra. But I'm still currently like not in that place, I don't think, especially with my working situation right now. I have no imminent plans of like leaving a day job to just do content as a job. So no worries about that. It was just a purely theoretical post that I was doing that happened to get a load of engagement because I think people were like using that as a means to jump on the conversation for all this coaching stuff. But I've talked for a while about that as sort of setting the scene for it. And that's essentially my stance, similar to JW's, in that it is this net positive, but yes, there are some people that we need to probably weed out as like, or at least expose as like not helpful coaches, or like what it means to be a good class, and why is there not this conversation in the community of like, I took this class, it was certainly not worth the money. Let's get that out there. That's kind of that's the thing that I think is the next step, I think, for Metafy, if it's going to be this net positive going ahead.
Yeah, I just want to touch on the almost sheer panic in your face every time you have to say and outrightly say for the last 10 years I've done free content, it's not changing.
I've literally done videos for 10 years. If you think I'm not monetizing it within that time, then you have to give me some credit in the bank that I'm here to do it.
Yeah, but you haven't said about the future, though.
Is my 1,000+ videos of free content and all those streams not enough to show that I'm dedicated to being an open source option?
Before
what you're saying is...
Before I ask Ben a quick question on this as well, Joe, just based on what you've kind of just said, to what amount of content would have to be premium to free for you to make it work? So would you still be hiding a lot more things? So if you started to doing like actually paid for content, like behind a paywall, what you give out for free right now is a lot of information, right? We know it's a lot of data, it's a lot of information that everyone gets, you know, that we're all very thankful for. You know, me and Ben use it and use you wherever we can as well, and sort of cite you as our reference point for a lot of things. But
we're not actually meant.
Would you continue giving that same amount of information? And what would... I'm trying to think how it would work. What would be behind that paywall, I guess?
So firstly, that's exactly the problem I have, is that I pride myself on being that open book and show everything that I'm thinking about testing and trying to give as much information as I possibly can. That's I think how we've become a reputable channel in the like we're not the best players, but we're knowledgeable enough and always try and be as transparent as possible. Is essentially the thing we're trying. That's like our model, I suppose, that we're like numbers driven. So even if we're not playing the most games of every deck in the format, we're at least like directing people in the right areas with no like ill intent of any kind, really. But that's the whole issue. The whole issue is, how do I evaluate the amount of time or work or effort or information that I put into a video to then categorize it to like, this can go to everyone, or this should be behind a paywall. I think that's a very dangerous line of me then like doing way more work for one thing and then basically having throwaway content that would be free and whatever, versus like, if I still put the most amount of time being the advert for my paid wall content by having very high level free content, and then I only have a certain amount of time for paid content. That's already like a very difficult balancing act for me, and I think it's a very difficult like ethical question and all these other things of where you draw that line as a person yourself, and I think that's different for each individual based on like how much they want to earn versus how much they want to be this like presence in essentially using your channel as free marketing for yourself. I suppose. A pillar. Definitely not. But then, what was the other question you said?
It was mainly around that balance.
That's the main difficulty, I think. And where that split would be, I don't know.
Interesting.
Essentially, I think it's easier for people who don't do content to do paywall only content, because they're just being known as a player, and any content they do is content that you wouldn't have otherwise. So it's actually easier to only do paywall content and no free content, I think, than someone who tries to juggle both, because I think that is a very dicey situation. You can get into a dicey situation of like, this is how much I'm willing to give away for free, but if you want to hear my real thoughts or my like more in detail thoughts, pay me now. Like that's what I think is risky.
It's always a weird one when you're having to like say, especially if it's behind a paywall, say like, this is what I would play, this is what you should play, and then suddenly they don't do too well, and then it's kind of.
You've just reminded me the exact other thing. So like, I feel like I would certainly suffer imposter syndrome massively, because I'm just a guy with my own testing, and it's still only this like finite amount that isn't the like whole hive mind and all this other stuff. So I would suffer from imposter syndrome and feel terrible if people do badly because of that. But also because all my content's free. If someone like takes a list, does badly, and says like, "Oh, Joe, you're an idiot. I did badly because of this," I'm like, "Dude, I'm just a guy talking. Don't like I'm like I'm just adding to the conversation here. You can't have too much of a go at me right now." But if I scam someone out of money and time, and when there are like invites on the line for some people, if someone had like paid a list going into NAIC needing points, like your situation, Alex, if you paid me and I told you to play Lost Pulse rather than Zard, and it worked out worse for you, then I'm like a really, really bad guy, and like I'm part of ruining your day, rather than being like, if it's free, it's like, oh, this is entertainment and educational, and I can take the bits that I care about and then call Joe an idiot for the other half hour, which is like completely fine. I'm way happier with that as a baseline than everything I say, you're paying for this, so it has to be valuable, and whatever else. And I think that is also a difficult thing for me to get my head around.
Yeah, it comes back to you see where you get all those like investment advice, and at the end of a video, at the bottom of the article, it's like, this is not financial advice.
That's the problem, right?
That's the legalities of it right now. But Ben, your thoughts on the whole coaching Metafy? You have friends who have had classes.
I have had friends who's purchased some coaching. I mean, I'm not a close stakeholder like Joe is, in terms of I've actually coached and I have specific ideas and aspects on how people should coach or anything like that. I think from my perspective as an observer and as somebody who could potentially, who would be potentially interested in coaching, there's three main things. It's the trust in the coaching or the content that I would receive is going to be the best possible, because I'll be spending money on it. So therefore, I need to ensure that that product is going to be, at least viable or good before I purchase it. 2, the rise in what I like to call instant content. So not coaching, not I'm going to buy an hour with Joe, and he's going to see how I play, and he's going to be able to do this or the other. Not that, but
I'll do that for free for you, Rab.
Yeah,
Throwing that out there.
Well,
that's
coaching,
true content
I don't know.
for this.
There is a price, but it's certainly not money.
Receiving abuse.
It's mostly verbal abuse that you have to pay the price.
Yeah, mental health.
And there's also, the rise in PowerPoint slide content, which isn't inherently bad. I'm not saying it's bad.
Hang on, don't have a go at PowerPoint slide content.
No,
please.
no, I'm not. I'm really not. I think 3 as well is that murkiness around not trusting the content you are going to receive is good, but like what Joe is putting out there, which is it's still murky waters. I think it's still a market that hasn't been defined properly yet, and I don't think there is enough consistency in the coaching side of things for somebody like me to go, yeah, I'm going to purchase this, or I'm going to purchase an hour with so-and-so, because I don't know what I'm getting.
Yeah. I think it's difficult for a consumer, especially who's like outside
really
of the game, to identify like, oh, this person's a top 5 coach on Metafy and he's doing this class. This is clearly going to be a high level product.
I know.
I'm not having a go.
Yeah.
Those are numbers picked out of the air. I'm not trying to select anyone in that,
and I think
or call anyone out. But yes, there isn't enough of like, I know this will be a good investment for me.
And
you basically have to go in willing to throw your money away to try out a number of different coaches and whatever. I've done a number of group sessions. I've taken away lots of good and some less helpful sessions. So you basically have to go in willing to lose that money to an extent.
And I think
the only
that's
thing
the problem.
that
that's why that's the only thing I have against it right now is that there isn't this criteria of like everyone who's. I wish just like everyone would do a survey that was then public to look at, rather than just like here are the top reviews and you're giving incentive to give a review. Like some people give like a discount on their next session if you do a review for me. Obviously they're incentivized to do positive ones, right? It's just like a lie. It's like having Just Eat reviews and then it's from their own like personal accounts being like, this is great.
The only way in potentially understanding whether something is going to be, whether the product you're receiving is going to be to a higher standard or not, at the moment, because Metafy doesn't have any sort of reviews or there's no sort of, I know they're asking for feedback on coaching and stuff like that, but we don't, it's not really something that's exposed enough for the average consumer. The only thing we have to go on is how well known the player is and how many achievements they have. If you buy something from Tord, you know what you're getting, right? You're getting advice from somebody who's, world class, potentially the world's best ever, all this kind of thing. But if you buy coaching from Joe Blogs, if I said to you, Joe, I'm going to get coaching from Tord Reklev, and then Alex comes up to you and say, I'm getting coaching from the guy down the street who's got top 4 at the league challenge, you already have that idea in your mind as to what type of product they're going to be receiving. And I think that's why that sort of market still isn't defined as of yet, really, enough for the average consumer. But I'm not saying coaching is bad, and I think I've always gone with the aspect of
it's mostly group sessions, which is what we're talking about, right?
Yeah,
because that's where the most get rich quick is. With coaching, it's very obvious. Like if you're not getting what you want out of it, you can just dip like the next week. But a group session is where they're getting this huge chunk of money immediately, and you don't know how useful it's going to be.
I mean, you're targeting a larger group.
So the big hope is that these coaches have, because they are putting themselves out there as people as well as players at that stage, right? My hope is that they have similar thoughts to me, where they have this level of imposter syndrome, have to put in the time to make it worthwhile, and know that if they want to still be in the community and be a public-facing figure and be this known player, that you can't scam people, and that you will eventually get found out. That's my hope. That's my belief that anyone who is just making the quick buck will eventually be caught out. But I feel like the concern is that it's not as transparent enough.
Because the only thing to go off at the moment is this is a top player, so therefore this type of coaching is I am though I'm going to receive this. So the majority of the audience is going to pander to that person or persons. So you already know, like you said, if they have, I know that I'm going to receive this amount of money or this amount of backers or this amount of people for coaching. I have to make sure that the product that I'm giving out has to be good. And because of my reputation, because I know that I'm going to be I already have a market to pander to. Not pander to, that's the wrong word. But, you know.
We know where you're going, it's fine.
But, yeah. But I mean, I said this the last time, I'd really love to see what the average difference is between a top tier Metafy class is and the kind of the lower tier.
Well, what classifies and lower right now? So that's the problem.
Well,
right?
I would say the lowest value group session I've had has essentially been, here are top performing play limitless lists. Here's what I like and don't like about them. That's a session that I've had that I felt coming away. I've done this myself. I could have done this myself. This hasn't taken much prep time.
But I want to see
I've not had an experience that I'm not getting the knowledge of a player that hits this threshold of like tournament play. I'm getting anyone who's looked at play limitless. Even though it's the person saying it that has this high level of experience, I'm not harvesting their hundreds of hours playing with a deck or this, that, and the other. So that could have been me choosing the wrong course. It could have been a Metafy coach who was kind of new to it and got a lot of experience and change. So it's not like I'm blacklisting one coach, because I think doing these sessions, the coaches will be getting better as well. They'll be taking in feedback. Possibly even the coaches will do other Metafy sessions and see what other people are doing and take bits and bobs from them. That's what I would want to do. So I've done sessions mostly to see what they're like in a lot of instances. So being that sort of secret shopper almost in a way gave me a better idea of what I think makes a good session versus a bad session. So I'm not saying that every coach has to do that, but I'm saying that even if you've had a bad experience with a coach, maybe it was the wrong session for you, or maybe that coach is still new to the thing and you have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they'll improve and give them feedback. And I have given a lot of the coaches that I took a group session with, I gave them feedback either on a form or just through Messenger of what I thought of the class. And I think that's also something that we also kind of have to accept, that for some people, they're not going to be a natural teacher or a natural, like, easy speaker in front of an audience, because a lot of the time, these are 19, 20-year-old kids. So it could be the first experience they've had with that at all. So
I'll
there you
start
go.
to chime in here now, considering last time as well. But just touching on that whole teaching aspect, I think there's different levels of teaching. I mean, I think I kind of mentioned this to you both before, where I overheard a conversation. Actually, didn't overhear. I was having a conversation with someone who gets coaching from Pablo, and I've mentioned, I have no idea what he's like as a coach, right? But we're talking coaching, not classes. But the best thing that they said was that he really is very good at teaching the younger years. And I think then there was a tweet which he put out with him, in his casting gear, but with the other seniors or maybe juniors, in a photo, which is again really cool to see. It's sort of like him coaching these sort of young, growing players who sort of going through various different divisions and ages, and a lot of them speaking quite glowingly about him, including like a person I kind of know from London, or maybe sort of around the London area, who and he's the dad of the child who gets some coaching. And so it's really good to see that come full swings and roundabouts. So I guess I'll give you my view, and I'll come out with the same statement again, because I do kind of think it's how I do feel about it. So what I've seen of Metafy classes so far is starting to get to the point where it's basically, in terms of numbers, I will caveat it this time rather than saying it completely outright. In terms of numbers, seeing it in the same light as a GoFundMe. It's an opportunity to somehow get paid potentially for not providing a product of sufficient quality to go to do your hobby and be paid to do something which you don't really have a right to do, maybe in some for some people, but that's currently how I've almost equated to. Obviously, it's not exactly the same, because you're, as Joe kind of mentioned, when you're doing these classes or you're doing coaching, you're putting yourself out there, or you should be in your mindset, in the fact that you're delivering something that you should be giving value to whoever's paying for your time or your course or your whatever you input into the game. The other biggest gripe I have it right now is, and I think you both already hit the nail on the head, is the fact that there's such a range of the classes themselves. Oh, I've just kind of suddenly gone dark, so apologies. So the video is just kind of recorded, and we've all gone bit dark grey. I may have gone over your video, Joe, but yeah, sorry. The range of sort of standards that we don't have like a baseline of is potentially appalling. I've heard stories of certain classes which maybe didn't sit right, and Joe put it in the realms of maybe it's not for you. From what I heard, those are the classes that shouldn't be for anyone. In all honesty, and that's what I've heard. I haven't experienced them, thankfully. But there needs to be, maybe from Metafy's perspective, like a level of minimum standard to be able to put on a class. Yeah, there's a quality assurance piece that really sort of needs to happen. And Joe again touched on what I would love to do as a video one day, and maybe I will. Maybe it could be my first video. I think it's pretty cool.
It's a great idea. I think it would be such an insight, Alex. I still think it's an amazing idea.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, but we don't want to toy with people's livelihoods, and that's always what's held me and Joe doing it, right? And it's essentially going out and doing a full mystery shop or sort of mystery view on a wide range of classes, and effectively review them, but without being like super critical of what they do. I mean, it'll be based on like presentation, teaching, the actual sort of how I felt is the actual return on investment, the kind of aspect. But I feel like that's something Metafy should be already looking into, and I'm surprised they're not, because you can see them. If you think about them as a platform, you think of it as like they're kind of like a Netflix, right? They're just a platform for coaches to come on and use their platform, and then there's reviews and so on and stuff like that. But they should be able to control what's going on to their platform, and that's the worry. I've seen more classes pop up this week, which I don't. I just can't get behind because I don't know what value it's truly giving. And if it's something like that, then it should be maybe like your free content. It should be something that's a bit more fun and out there, rather than putting it behind a paywall so you can get a quick buck so that you can go have, I don't know, McDonald's for the rest of the week or something.
That's the thing.
But it depends.
To be fair... go on.
No, but, But then again, do you just put the responsibility on the consumer, and do you just inherently trust the kind of the belief that the market will dilute the...
Well, we as Joe said, potentially weed out. I don't think weeding out is the right way, but it probably needs to get to that stage where people should start to think about this, because with Pokemon, especially in the tournaments nowadays, there's so much like prizes at hand, right? There's so much going on in the whole tournament, and then getting coaching is a natural progression of why this sort of prizing sort of come about now as well, or because of why we're doing it. The worrying thing is, this, though. Are you paying to get to that stage, or who are you? It's really, I don't like it. That's the reason why I don't like it. It could be, and I say this again, what I said before as well, it could be me being very jealous of how everyone is able to do it. I mentioned before that I feel like I probably could do a class, but I wouldn't want to right now, because I want to put out something that's true quality out there for whomever may purchase something or spend some time with me. And I don't think a lot of people have that mindset, and that's my worry.
The only sort of argument I will stick my flag in is with kind of my chest out, is a lot of coaching and a lot of a lot of coaching and a lot of the audience is juniors and seniors, and that does worry me, is that a lot of kind of parents' money is being spent on coaching and potentially Metafy classes. So I would like to imagine a lot of the people that are taking the responsibility of providing coaching and a service to players are approaching it with a very serious manner, and that they are receiving money.
I would differentiate group sessions and coaching. I think it's so clear to know when a coach is being helpful and when a coach is not being helpful to you.
Yeah,
I think that is so
yeah,
much.
branching
I think
it
that is
out.
so much more easy to distinguish as you as a player compared to a group session.
That's because it's 1-to-1, right? So when it's a
Exactly.
group session, you have to cater to the masses effectively. So
But-
when
but
you're doing
the
1-to-one,
problem is-
you can
It's- it
easily.
has
The
to be-
problem,
it
the
has
problem
to be
with
two
coaching
separate
1-to-one and
yeah.
group Metafy is that group Metafy is effectively being done by a number of free content providers with podcasts, with YouTube videos, with all this other stuff, right? So there is a lot of free content providing a lot of information, and there's even very high level players like James Cox has done super in-depth guides within one deck list, which is free. Kieran Farrer's done the exact same thing. That's becoming more and more the norm of like very hyper detailed deck specific matchup based, who goes first when, like what's your opening board looking like. That hyper specific stuff is on the free market already. So, like, what's the point of a group session? Like, you have to be providing more value than these people doing it for free right now. That's my concern. Is that, and I don't think there are enough players that are either like experts of one deck that can make that. I feel like right now the expert of one deck sessions are big wins because you're getting hundreds of hours of information from these specific people. I would be more concerned about like overarching meta discussion type Metafys, or if you're seeing someone who doesn't have a huge amount of experience and had one placement with a deck, then doing a course and jumping on, I got top 16, here's my course. Like, that is where the red flags go for me, because they are essentially trying to double their winnings from the tournament by having the prize money and then the Metafy money. Like, that's it's a major red flag to me.
And say one other red flag for me is I've seen Metafy classes, and I think there's been numerous of them, where they talk about a deck which is past format. We've gone into a NAIC with a completely new format, and a lot of the preparation for a lot of players should be going into that. But then I started to see numerous, which, for example, and I think we might have had one or two from post NAIC as well, because going into Worlds is another new quote unquote new format, because we get a new mini set as well, which might shake more things up, and we're starting to see that already in some tournaments across the seas. But there's been classes specifically where they look at a previous format deck, and I'm just like, well,
it depends how useful it is. If it's here was my thought process, here's how I came to this list, I think that's useful information, because you can take that process and then use that process for your own testing going to another tournament. If it's I played this is what you do in this matchup, when it's like a format that's ended, then it is completely pointless, because then
I guess it comes down to what their title of the actual class was, right? If they just said,
it's more about the content within it. The title could be also misleading,
I meant, but to
suppose.
entice you into it is the title, right? Or what the person is actually sort of selling it as, and that's when the incentive not the case. We don't know what it is.
The incentive is to be the shop window, like a YouTube thumbnail. Essentially.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, we can talk all day.
It's also interesting. So the thing that's also worth noting is that I do think it's going to be important to keep providing lots of these content avenues, and to help. Like, there's still this huge gap of Pokemon cannot have professional players. There's like 5 people on the planet who can be a professional player right now, and it is a sad state of affairs. I wish there was plenty more people who could do it for a living. Myself included.
I've always had the view that maybe since the change of the prize money's made it very drastically different, but I've always had the view as Pokemon is a hobby. It's a
of course,
children's trading card game. So if there are people who can make this a livelihood, just playing this game that we'd like to think they all know and love, great. But I think there should be very few and far between. I don't think it should.
That's what it is right now.
And
I think it's slightly too few, but I don't think it should be hundreds of people, obviously. But I think it should be more than 4.
No, at the moment.
You don't think it should?
No.
Interesting.
I disagree.
Well, I mean, so here's the thing.
Like
look at Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Was also like this kid's game, but there's big enough channels where just being a fun content creator is good enough.
But then it's not. It's not Pokemon. You're a content creator. In my mind.
No, but it's a symbiotic relationship, because the fun content can also weed people towards a bigger overarching goal of let's get them deeper into the game and let's get them as a hobbyist rather than being someone vaguely interested in this. You know.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird one for me, I think.
You'd have to.
It's like
you'd
how
have
many
to
people
also
open a pack
separate.
opening video then go down the rabbit hole. Like, you know,
Yeah.
that's the same thing. And the pack opening channels have millions of views, and then
And then there's
the hyper
millions of them as well. To be fair.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
So it just shows how popular they are.
Yeah, you have to separate the game from the hobby, I suppose, if that makes sense. Like, do you want professional
Game from the
players,
hobby.
or do you want professional hobbyists? You know, there's two separate things, I'd say.
I just don't think it's, even though again
Professional
we've
hobby.
had the increase in players and money,
Like
and
the pack
and
openers.
competition and
Like you've got the
prizes.
pack openers, and then you got the professional players, right?
So,
Does that make sense?
I didn't understand how you were.
Yeah,
defining
I kind of ignored
hobbyist
him.
and game and player. I feel like you're once again just throwing out superlatives and sticking
Is
your
my
flag in the
mind-
ground and puffing out your chest and saying.
I think I might have said this before
Yeah,
as well, but he's
that's
doing
my
the
issue.
consultant thing of what me and Ben do as a job. We just throw like buzzwords and then see what happens.
You're buzzwording
my-
and letting words fall out of your mouth and eventually like ending on a high note at the end of your sentence, and then it's almost a question but also finishing the sentence. Or is that just me? Am I just way off? Because I'm confused.
I mean, I semi-ignored him, and I was just going to say I would want it to be as big as like an actual esport before it gets to the point where we actually have full-on professionals. Or
Fine. Completely fine. But
I
also,
wanna
like,
get to that.
look at the Magic Tour. Like, how many professionals are in the Magic Tour? It's
I
like
have
less
to
than 50, right? Or maybe like, yeah, between that sort of 50 of 100. It's still a very high caliber player base, but there are people who can make a living off this game. And they are then what I think is important is having these people come to every single tournament. Like, ideally, Todd goes to every tournament on the calendar. He's a poster boy. Azul could be a poster boy. And all these sorts of things can be people for the game. And that's also just completely untapped by Pokemon. Like, there's always more content that could be done with our player base. You know, think of, like, in Japan, how before a new tournament starts, they will have, like, previous tournaments of the top 8 of Japan, like, that year.
Yeah.
They have their
It's a
4
great way to
Heavenly Kings.
Heavenly Kings,
like
exactly. So they showcase new cards, they showcase new decks, they have all these extra tournaments and all this other fun stuff and all these other incentives. And I think that easily could be weaved in to push the game, the competitive scene, into more of that esports realm. It's like the amount of prizing that's come into the game is so exciting for the prospects, but we're only just beginning. And streams have also come on so much this season.
I think that's.
And I think it
that's
could be
the
part
thing.
of the bigger plan, but there's still so much to go, I think.
Yeah, I think we're still at the very infancy of a
Yeah.
lot of this. So we could spike, like, again, another Pokemon, more competitive Pokemon spike, like, coming soon. But yeah, I think we're still at a very early stage of the journey.
Yeah, I agree.
Ben, have you figured out what you were trying to say yet?
No. Next.
Thanks.
Next.
All right, I think we can wrap up most of our Pokemon talk here. I mean,
Yeah.
that would end our episode. I think we got into it. We've got a lot more to come during this kind of semi downtime until Worlds, I guess, as well. We'll continue trying to work out our technical issues and bring more episodes. Ben, whereabouts are you right now? Let the viewers know.
I'm in Tunisia. I'm on
How's that?
holiday again. Yeah, it's all right. Had a massage this morning.
Not from Harriet.
She basically no, it's a masseuse. She absolutely battered me as well. She was like using her elbow and a roller. I think it was like a rolling pin. Felt like one anyway. But I'll be sore in the morning. But yeah, living life otherwise. Family holiday. Harriet's got 2 nieces, so it's been fun. But yeah, all inclusive. So I've been
You look
shoveling my
tanned.
face. No, I
He
don't.
looks tanned. Is that a tan?
Just
It's
a
the
little
telly.
joke there. It's the
Just a little
telly!
It's the telly.
Yeah, I'm just tanned blue for a little bit. Now it's green.
The only, I mean, we went. Me and Joe went on Tomo's Stag years ago, and we were the only ones who came back red, and everybody else came back brown.
Lobster.
Yeah, because I am pale. I am a very pale man. No, but yeah, enjoy myself. I did a diary for the boys just out of boredom. Which is
Can you
quite
give us
funny, 'cause
one? Can you
there's
leave
a
us
lot
with
of
An
one?
groups.
excerpt of the diary.
Yeah, can you leave
An
us
expert
with
of
one
the
little
diary.
excerpt?
All right, hang on.
Of course it is.
This is
We're
terrifying
all
right
waiting
now.
in anticipation now. This is the new lawn. So Slowly.
Just cut this dead air out, then, I guess. You read it. It's your own diary. I can't.
Your diary.
It's too personal of a thing for us to read.
No, you read it because I can't record. And
forget it. We'll do it next week. We'll keep them waiting for next week. We'll save them for next week.
Yeah. You do it.
Yeah.
You do it.
That'll keep them coming back. Well, guys, I think we've been going on long enough, and I can confidently say this was almost as good as the one we did last week. I can confidently say that.
Yeah, we didn't crash with audio so far. Although I will say there will be a couple of parts of the video where your face is just covered by Alex's headphones. It's connected. You want to switch device?
Even better.
Nothing without a technical
you can
hit,
just put, you can edit in a question mark whenever I've spoken this podcast.
There has been some sentences that have kind of just ended without any sort of structure.
What do you mean? It makes sense in my head.
My favourite one was when you were stalling for time and you said, "Stick my flag in the ground, puff my chest out," and then ended up not saying a coherent sentence after that. That was my personal favourite.
I said that I'm worried about the kids. I'm worried about the kids. I'm worried about the juniors.
All right,
and I'm worried about the seniors.
We'll end our episode with Benjamin worried about the kids. But yes, thank you very much for sticking with us. Sorry it's been so long since our last episode as well. But this has been Spill the TCG podcast, and we'll be with you again hopefully next week. So see you guys soon.